So we all know that we humans are responsible for this horrible change in the diet of the albatross. We have created the plastic that has replaced their natural diet. But are we so naive to think that we are different from the albatross? In fact, we too are consuming plastic, and we are feeding it to our children as well. We consume plastic both from the leaching from our food packaging into our food and drink, and also more directly because plastic has entered our food chain through our plastic poisoned soil, air, and water. So we too are passing on these plastics in utero to our children. In fact, our babies are now born pre-polluted with hundreds of chemicals from the plastics that we consume. And then we continue the process once our children are born when we nurse our children with contaminated breast milk. And finally, as they begin to eat solid food, we feed them again with plastic polluted food. Let's take a look.
My dad. He was one of the Midwest's largest industrial chemical distributors, and he practiced his craft liberally. Embedded in my DNA has been the belief that chemicals make us cleaner, safer, and prettier. Then, my 30s hit, and it was like every best friend started having kids. They began taking a closer look at what they were buying, and it made me consider everything I use. I realized I'm surrounded by a lot of chemicals.
There's 84,000 chemicals being used by U.S. companies. Almost none of them have been adequately tested for their health impacts.
A possible link between common pesticides and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder.
For decades, we've all depended on special chemicals to protect us from fire, but now there are serious questions about the safety of those chemicals.
Chemicals from makeup could be seeping into her bloodstream.
You can just be living a normal life and you will accumulate over time hundreds and hundreds of toxic chemicals. Body burden really refers to the full array of chemicals or contaminants that are in our bodies.
During one of my late-night Google sessions, I found a study that freaked me out.
Babies, they are basically coming into the world pre-polluted. We tested for more than 400 chemicals, and we found on average about 200 different chemicals in cord blood.
As someone who wants to start a family one day, I became very concerned about what chemicals I had in my body.
All the various things that when I have a little one, it will go from my body to them.
I don't think we realize how much we put in our bodies and how toxic it can be, and that we do pass it on, to our children. I think if we were more aware, we would be a lot more careful.
My results showed that I was full of chemicals, from pesticides to plastics and flame retardants. If we are surrounded by chemicals in the products we use and the food we eat, are we able as individuals to impact our own exposure? I brought in an expert whose guides and phone app showed me where some of the toxins were coming from.
Honestly, my legs do not need to smell like raspberry rain.
She helped me create a 30-day plan to see if I could lower my body burden with some very simple, basic changes that anyone can make. If our government won't create stronger regulations, and if the chemical companies won't prioritize people over profits, can we protect ourselves and future generations? Can we hit the reset button, or is it too late?
So overload poses the question, can we reset our personal body burden and prevent passing on these toxic chemicals to our offspring? The film shows the challenges of avoiding petrochemical pollution, chemicals that surround us in our daily lives. But it does show a path to reducing our exposure and to detoxing our bodies from the load that we've already accumulated. Over the course of the film, my friend Susie goes from terrible to tolerable in her body burden, and she is now the parent of a healthy 1-year-old daughter. You can see the film Overload in its entirety, and I hope you do. Today is the premiere for the film. I know because I'm an executive producer. It's happening in Los Angeles, and it will be released for you to see on Amazon starting tomorrow. So, as an environmental attorney, I am mostly interested in how we can prevent the poisoning before we accumulate this body burden and pass it on to our offspring. So, how do I do that? This is my strategy. First, I draft and promote laws that ban or control the top 10 pollutants that are found on International Coastal Cleanup Day around the globe. This is a good test study of how to begin with the worst offenders. And secondly, what I do is I work to pass comprehensive legislation that requires a circular economy so that polluting waste is no longer acceptable. And I also work to reform our totally inadequate toxics laws. Finally, I work to require better education for the public and for school children so that we really understand our part in the cycle of life so that we can be responsible participants in it instead of just creating waste and moving on. So in my work as an attorney, I've worked on many laws, but I've drafted 2 that have become legislation. The first being the ban on plastic microbeads in the United States. I drafted that law and then President Obama signed it, so that was wonderful when we had a president that would do such things. And then I also drafted more recently the law in California to make plastic straws only available upon request. And this law, which passed in California, is very important because it really made a much bigger change than just in California because we are the 5th largest economy in the world, bigger than the economy of Canada. So, and businesses decided to switch products so that they didn't have to go through the step of asking whether you want to have a plastic straw. So it is having a big impact. So I am one of the co-founders of Plastic Pollution Coalition 10 years ago. And when we founded Plastic Pollution Coalition, we chose our title very carefully. And the reason we call it Plastic Pollution Coalition is to change the discussion from the way the industry had framed it, which was marine debris. That was the term of art at the time. And the reason that that is not an appropriate term is, number one, it doesn't point the finger at the major cause of the problems that we're finding. All 10 items on International Coastal Cleanup Day are single-use plastics. We're not talking about coconuts, we're talking about plastic. And secondly, calling the problem pollution brings up policy solutions that are of the caliber that we treat other pollutants. We can't deal with it if we don't properly name it. So changing the term of art was very important. So we all know with air pollution that you can't go around with a net after the pollution is in the air as smog and collect it. Somehow we've gotten the idea that we can do that with plastics, but it's not true. We know that we need smokestacks and we need tailpipes to prevent the pollution from our fossil fuels from getting out into the air, right? But the same is true with plastics. We need real preventative methods. In fact, cleaning up after exposure of plastics is just as ridiculous as saying that to prevent gun violence, we're going to go around and collect shell casings from bullets. The damage is already done. It's done from the beginning of the process of fracking and drilling for the fossil fuels. It's done in the manufacture of these toxic chemicals and products. It's done when we use them and we poison ourselves and our fetuses. So the waste is just the tail end of this very destructive process. And the bullet has already done its harm. So we need to stop pretending that the solution to plastic pollution is going around and picking up the trash. That is way down the line. So I am very excited that I've been hearing more about solutions that aren't just cleanup solutions. In fact, 2/3 of our globe is blue. If we were just to try and clean up the plastic pollution in the ocean, 95% of it is smaller than a grain of rice. It's from the top of the ocean to the bottom of the Marianas Trench. It's an incredible energy in the ocean that is very destructive. It would be an impossible task. So we need to move further upstream. In addition, we need to stop trying to pretend that we can incorporate bits of plastic pollution into products that are primarily made of virgin plastic and pretend that this is somehow a solution. It is not. We are still, even if we reuse this pollution, we will still be poisoning ourselves and will be creating permanent waste. So I want to talk about real solutions. And one real solution that I've been working on is with plastic water bottles. Plastic bottles are the #2 item found on International Coastal Cleanup Day around the world. And so dealing with the problem of plastic water bottles is a major solution. So how do we do that? I have drafted a paper, and it's at 70 pages, much longer, more information that I can share with you now, but I hope that you will read it. There's a link in my bio in the information. And it was published at my law school's water policy organization at Tulane University, and it's called Public Policy Solutions on Tap at a Fountain Near You. What I propose in this paper is how we can get back to providing water in the public forum in the most sustainable way, which is through refillable water hydration stations. So in the report, you will learn how we got away from public offering of water and gave that task over to corporations, why that has been so terrible for us and the environment, and I show real legal policy solutions to get us back on track to make tap water once again the drink of choice, because it is the only sustainable solution. So I want to share with you one more clip, which has to do with work I'm doing directly in Los Angeles to make Los Angeles a urban oasis for public tap water consumption. We have the Olympics coming to Los Angeles, so this is a very important task because we will be having visitors from all over the world. And so I want to share that with you. And I also want to thank you and let you know that the clips to the videos I've shown you and the link to my paper you can get from me at any time, Lisa KAAS BOYLE. And this is my concluding clip, and thank you so much for supporting policy solutions to plastic pollution.
Hi, I'm Evelyn Wendell, a water expert.
And I'm Lisa Boyle, an environmental attorney. And we are WeTap.
And we are moms on a mission to make tap water America's drink of choice.
This is a single-use plastic water bottle. Plastic bottles are the #2 item found on beaches worldwide, and they are such a waste. It takes 3 times the amount of water inside this bottle to manufacture it, and it's made from fossil fuels. The chemicals in the plastic leach into the contents inside, poisoning them. And very few of these bottles even get recycled. They wash into our lakes, rivers, and streams in the ocean, becoming fish food for the fish that we eat.
I'm going to use the WeTap app and add this fountain to those geotagged around the globe.
We can use our free WeTap technology to grade individual fountains for health and safety, just like our restaurants are, to instill public confidence in our public drinking water.
Public water is our only sustainable method to keep us hydrated and healthy without depleting and polluting our environment.
We are so lucky to have the Safe Drinking Water Act in the U.S. to hold our tap water to the highest